From deep in the heart of Central Texas, it's the Best of the Outdoors podcast, brought to you by Texas Fish and Game Magazine, the voice of the Texas outdoor nation. I'm your humble host, Dustin Vaughn Warnke, author, outdoor writer, videographer, speaker, blogger, and podcaster, and I'm so excited that you're taking the opportunity to download our show or stream it online. However you're listening, thank you so much. If this is your first time listening to the show, I invite you to download some of our other podcasts. They're past episodes. The title of the episode is basically the subject of the episode, so you can kind of go in there and listen to some past episodes we've had. We've got 30 some odd episodes. We come out every 2 weeks with this show, and really had an awesome opportunity to visit with a lot of awesome people here that we interview, and just love to have the opportunity to share that with you. So thank you so much for tuning in. So this week we have Katie DeLorenzo, who is a huntress, and only my second female guest to have on the podcast, and I'm so excited to have her on because she is a champion of conservation, putting your best foot forward as a hunter. She's very much about being athletic and being fit and being a hunter, and I just love everything about what this woman does. She's just great and a real champion, especially for females, getting out in the outdoors and hunting and fishing and doing all the things that we love to do as guys, because typically us guys, we kind of have domination on this sport, and to have a female that is that much of an advocate of getting out there and getting it done right is just awesome to see. So I'm really excited to have her on the show. Before we get into our interview with Katie, I wanted to bring up to you my thoughts of the Bassmaster Classic. Now, I'll be honest, I've not really followed the Bassmaster Classic series that much in the past, but now that it came to Texas, it was a big deal. I went to the expo, saw a lot of sponsors of the magazine, and saw a lot of friends that I know in the industry and everything, and that was awesome. But the thing that really surprised me was after I left the show on Friday, the expo, I watched the actual event of the chase boats and all the different things going on around the Bassmaster Classic for people to watch. They had a streaming live coverage of the show on the Bassmaster website, bassmaster.com. So what I did was downloaded the website and got the streaming stuff on my phone and on my tablet, and I was just glued to that screen of my phone and the tablet all weekend long, just taking care of things around the house and just watching and seeing how everything was going to shape up. And I really had my eye on Brent Ehrler as the number one leaderboard of both Friday and Saturday. But then this guy, Jordan Lee, comes from behind with a huge victory. He is sponsored by Carhartt, who's run with us before with the magazine, as well as PowerPole and some other sponsors. And big shout out to Jordan Lee, because he won the Bassmaster Classic and $300,000 grand prize and a bunch of sponsorships and endorsements and all that come with that. I was really just blown away at the way he came in with a 27-pound bag plus 27+ pound bag of fish, which is the largest bag of the entire tournament on the last day. I was just blown away at how that played out. And he's only 25 years old, college graduate, and has got a great career in front of him, so I'm really excited about that. So, on to our guest this week. I'm really excited about Katie DeLorenzo. Like I said, she is a female huntress. She is an advocate of conservation and an active woman in the great outdoors. I am really impressed by her hunting prowess, and she's still kind of new to the hunting sports, but she's really, really doing well with them, and I think she's a great advocate for women getting out in the outdoors. As well as she's only my second female guest to have on the podcast, but she's just a great advocate of all things that are good and wonderful in the outdoors, and I wanted to have her on the show. So Katie is awesome, and I think you'll really enjoy this interview together with us, and really enjoy the time that I spent with her, because I just so agree. We talk about conservation, we talk about New Mexico hunting, which is a neighboring state to Texas, so I figured that would be a good thing. A lot of people travel to New Mexico from Texas to hunt, not a very far drive. Well, everything out of Texas is a long drive, but comparably to going to Colorado or, another state to hunt, New Mexico, it's really good. It's beautiful out there. If I did not live in Texas, that's where I would choose to live, because New Mexico, the couple of times I've been there, has just been so breathtakingly beautiful, and offers a lot of great public land opportunities and things like that a lot of people trek from Texas to go put in for their draw system. And Katie is definitely one that is put in for a lot of draw system hunts and has a lot of information about that. She is New Mexico Huntress on Facebook and Instagram if you want to look her up and follow her. She is very quickly building an awesome platform of different fans and everything that follow her on Instagram and on Facebook. And what I'm really a fan of is the way that she portrays hunting. There's not a lot of gory pictures and that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of subject matter for anti-hunters to get after her on, and we talk about that in the show. So here's my interview with Miss Katie DeLorenzo. Joining me on the phone is Miss Katie DeLorenzo, the New Mexico Huntress. How are you doing today, Katie?
I'm doing really good, Dustin. How are you today?
Doing great, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. I honor you, and I try to honor all of the guests on the show because of the work that you're doing in social media in the realm of teaching women that it's okay to hunt and that it is cool to hunt, and also going forth and kind of broadening your own spectrum of hunting and fishing and doing those kind of outdoor activities that women a lot of times don't get into. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, I just think, of course, there's kind of a barrier there, and I think I'm lucky in that my family has hunted and fished my whole life, and I didn't necessarily follow that track early on. I played soccer instead, but now coming back to it and having that support system has been really wonderful. I think women are maybe starting to get that this is just such a special thing to do. In hunting, it challenges you mentally and physically, and you're putting organic free range food on the table.
Right.
And there's a lot of appeal in that, especially with, everyone's thoughts right now on the food movement. And I think, that's kind of opening people's eyes to why we hunt, and really just this sense of adventure that you don't get in normal life. If you think about socially, the world we live in, it's pretty much, you go out and get whatever you want, and that's just not hunting. It's unpredictable. You have to be prepared, and you're going to have experiences that you just couldn't have doing anything else. And so my goal is really just to kind of say, hey, I'm not perfect. I only seriously started hunting and focusing on it 2 to 3 years ago. And so anyone can do it. And there's so many resources to help, new hunters get started.
That's great. And your handle is New Mexico Huntress. And do you mainly hunt New Mexico, or where else do you hunt outside of that? Are you mainly just in your home state for the most part?
I really am. And most of that is just, financial, is where, I know where to go and where I can afford to go.
Sure.
I spend a lot of time in southern Colorado because my sister and brother-in-law live up there. And so, I had the opportunity to go on a mountain goat hunt in Colorado this past year, and that was pretty mind-blowing. And unfortunately, I just didn't have the funds to put into those Colorado sheep and goat tags this year.
Right. No, I definitely understand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's different than, outside of Texas, we kind of take it for granted. We have all these exotics that we can hunt, but you have a lot of native game in the western states, especially New Mexico, that you can hunt, native game and exotics both. And technically, you've got a free-ranging herd of oryx and those kind of animals. Is that correct in New Mexico?
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's something that maybe, most people aren't so aware of, that we do have, amazing elk and mule deer and, of course, those native species. And then in the 1970s, ibex were introduced in the Florida mountains. My favorite animal by far, just because they're so insanely talented at going up and down those sheer cliff faces. It's just a joy to watch if you've never seen it, even if you don't hunt. And then, of course, oryx as well. And they're free range. The ibex, I believe it's the only free range ibex hunt in the Western Hemisphere, someone told me. And, they're from Iran. And so it's pretty incredible that they were transplanted here. I think there were 15 of them. And by 1974, we had our first ibex hunt. And I got to go on an archery ibex hunt with my friend this fall, and it was pretty much the coolest thing I've ever seen because I actually saw him shoot it, and I spotted it. So it was awesome.
Wow, that's great, Katie. And one of the things, you're not afraid to take on adventure and challenge, which a lot of hunters in Texas, we have it pretty easy in a lot of regards. Of we sit in a blind or we do a spot and stalk on pretty flat land. I mean, you're climbing mountains, you're going all over the place, you're doing a variety of different things that's challenging. And one of the things you're really big about is fitness. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm not one of those people that you're going to see that's just so super strong, but I am trying to get there. I'm 115 pounds, and
Wow.
I grew up playing soccer, and so, I have like a foundation of an athlete, but sometimes people see me and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so small. But I think just having that kind of foundation of being an athlete and understanding discipline and training, I shoot my bow 3 to 5 times a week, and I work out almost every day. And I think people are sometimes, they underestimate me. Like my dad and I did my first sheep hunt in the Lithier Wilderness, and we had it quartered. We didn't bone it out because we were just trying to get the meat out. And, all the camping gear is in one pack. The sheep is in another pack. My dad's like, Kate, you're not even going to be able to get it on your back. And I'm like, okay, Dad, well, it's my animal. I want to carry it out.
Right.
So let's just start going. And if I need to switch you packs, I will. And I made it down the whole mountain. And after that hunt, I just had like such a sense of accomplishment and wanted to take on more challenges. And certainly like the goat hunt, we hiked into the Maroon Bells, and, my sister and I packed the goat back to camp while the guys went after another
Wow.
goat. And I love that. I like, when people underestimate me and I can prove them wrong, and also proving that to myself, because it just builds your confidence.
That's great. Grr, right? Woman power. I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I just think that New Mexico offers so many different things. And listen to Jason Sacco's podcast, Outdoor Adventures with Jason, which I helped him get that started. I haven't talked about that on this show much lately, but you were a guest on his show, and that's how I kind of started following you and started learning more about your history and what you're doing in social media, which is awesome. And I just kind of said, man, it'd be awesome to have somebody that's that cool, that really takes on adventure and challenge like that on our show. So it's one of the chief reasons I wanted to have you on, because you were a great interview for him.
Oh, well, thanks. I appreciate that very much. I think, New Mexico affords us so many great opportunities, and all over. I mean, the United States, one thing I kind of learned from all of my social followers is a lot of them are in foreign countries, and chatting with them, they don't have the same opportunities that we have here in terms of
Right.
diversity of wildlife or different scenarios. I mean, they just don't have it. You see their pictures and it's the same thing all the time.
Right.
Or, they're paying a lot of money to go travel to other places. And so I just think we're very, very blessed to have such a diverse and accessible, model in America. And it's like, take advantage of it. It's there for everybody. I don't have a lot of money to spend on big hunts, but, I do public land hunts and put in for the draw like everybody else, and still have had a lot of luck with that. So
That's great.
Hopefully in the future I could, maybe afford something a little fancier. I really want to do a tar hunt in New Zealand, and that's kind of like
Ooh.
the carrot I'm holding in front of my own face right now for working hard for this next year. But, that's kind of a dream. And we actually have tar here that escaped a big game ranch. And so
Really?
that's kind of like an interesting little fact. So if I could possibly kill one here and then harvest one in New Zealand, that would be kind of a dream for me. So.
Right. Well, I just kind of thought New Mexico being a border state to Texas would just be a fun thing to cover on our show, since we're kind of a Texas-based show. But hunting there is very accessible, but it's based around the draw system. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. I just put in about 2 weeks ago, I think, was the deadline, and am anxiously awaiting tags for this next year. So
That's great. And what are you after this next year, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, they haven't pulled names out of a hat yet, so I don't have anything, but I put in for absolutely everything.
I just mean what you put in. I was just curious what you put in for. So.
Oh, sure. I mean everything. So
great.
I put in for aoudad, ibex, oryx, antelope, mule deer, elk. The only things really I didn't put in for is we have some draw hunts for turkey and bear, and I didn't put in for those.
Okay.
But everything else, including javelina. So.
I'm just amazed at your, relatively short span as a hunter. You've taken a lot of animals. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people will write me and say, Katie, you're such a great hunter. And I'm like, well, I put in the hard work, and I certainly read and do my homework and prepare as much as possible. But I'm surrounded by amazing hunters and people that are so knowledgeable. They have a lifetime of knowledge that I couldn't even hope to match. And so, my dad is a biologist. He's worked for the Forest Service for 36 years and grew up hunting and fishing.
That's great.
He's ridiculous. He's like, I don't know. He's like the Dos Equis man of hunting. It's kind of annoying.
That's great.
Yeah. And then my sister's a biologist as well. And so, she's 11 years older than me, but in her own right, such an amazing hunter and a huge inspiration to me. And her husband is also a ranch manager and a guide, and has had a lot of really amazing hunting experiences. And so our whole family hunts, including their 2 kids, my niece and nephew.
Wow.
And my nephew killed his first deer at 12 years old with a bow. And so,
that's great.
Yeah, in terms of our family, I'm a really late bloomer, but they're so super supportive of me. And, also friends. I have one friend that's like an amazing bow hunter, and he basically taught me how to shoot a bow and take me out to get that bighorn sheep. And so I owe it all to them for sure.
Oh, that's great. I mean, you've got a great support system. I grew up, as I said on this podcast before in other interviews, I grew up around hunting and fishing, but I was mainly around the fishing side because my dad decided that he wanted to fish all year and he couldn't hunt all year. We really didn't have the exotics and that kind of stuff like we have now. And so he was mainly a bass fisherman and ran a lot of the bass semi-pro circuits and stuff in local bass clubs. But I didn't get into hunting myself. I'm a late bloomer until my early to mid-20s. So I'm not that far away from you there. I've been at it for, kind of semi-professionally for about 10 years now. But, I live for the sport. I love doing it, and I love teaching other people how to do it. And you definitely do as well, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just unlike anything else you're going to do. I mean, I played soccer competitively for a long time. I blew my knee out my senior year of high school.
That's right.
And then I ended up coaching for many years, and I guess I kind of had a prodigal son moment, where I went away from hunting.
That's okay.
When we grew up, growing up, I mean, my dad's pretty hardcore. To him, if you're going to pay for a fishing license, you're going to catch your limit. And It doesn't matter what the weather's like. It doesn't matter if the fish are biting. You're out there like
grinding it out, right?
Right. And I guess maybe when I was younger, it was like a little difficult to be out there for 8 hours. And it's like, Dad, can I go to the truck? And so I guess I kind of got to the point where I really wanted to understand it better, because when I was little, I was into it, and I guess I took it for granted. Like, my dad would bring home animals and always show me, kind of their makeup. Like, we'd, look at what the turkey was eating, or he would show me stuff, and I just really did take it for granted.
Right. And I mean, that's sometimes a lot of folks grow up like that and don't really reconnect with it until a little bit later in life. And that's kind of the case that you and I both did. I think it's something we have in common, but it's something we embrace now. And that's the one thing I wanted to mention about hunting. I know there's a lot of folks that listen to our podcast that are mainly on the fishing side, but both of those really pursuits, there's nothing you can really compare to it, because you get to take home meat or fish for your trouble, for all that it costs you to go forth. There's not another sport out there like it, and that's one thing I wanted to bring up to people that kind of, don't understand hunting that well is because there's just so many benefits you get, as well as conservation, and you're part of a conservationist, not a preservationist, as Jason Sago says.
Sure.
You're part of making nature last for the next generation, all those kind of things. I just think that it's a wonderful thing that those of us that love to hunt and fish, we're part of that movement of conservation a lot more than the anti-hunters and anti-fishing people are. Is that right? Do you agree with me?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I think, first of all, that discussion with an anti-hunter, somebody that hasn't had experience, it's that deeper connection.
Right.
I think Steve Ranella at one point has a video clip where he was doing a book reading, and an anti-hunter was kind of coming after him and saying, why would you take this innocent animal's life? And he's saying, well, there are many arguments for this, and I'd also like to argue that I probably know more about that animal than an anti-hunter is ever going to know. Yes. And so I think understanding our connection starts there, really. Yes. And then from that point, understanding the, tremendous amount of resources that hunters put towards conservation. It's always kind of a weird argument because, I have friends that joke and they say, well, you love it so much you want to kill it. And I'm like, well, okay, well, let's back up, because how much money have you given, in the past year? I've given thousands of dollars. Yes. And it's such a bigger conversation where, they have to understand, first of all, the North American model of management and the fact that, we have already kind of done so much that we have to manage populations sometimes, and hunting is a big part of that and a really positive part of that. Going home with meat in the freezer, whether it's fish or game, I mean, what an amazing thing to be able to say I went and harvested that. And, you're honoring that animal with every meal you have. Like, I mean, I just love the fact that, people go to Whole Foods and think they're doing the earth a favor. At the end of the day, they may have no idea where that came from, or what kind of life that animal lived. And for me, I say, the animals that we're hunting, for the most part, they live great lives in the outdoors. And the killing part isn't, so easy for people to deal with, but that's one moment in their life that's, their life is ending, and that's a part of the game. And then if you think about, other types of food systems, they're raised specifically to be meat, and they probably have a very different experience in that system. And so for me, I just say it's the most organic free range meat there is, and all of the effort that we take as hunters to both conserve populations and also, go out and find them. It's just a tremendous amount of effort that I don't think anti-hunters always understand. Right.
No, and I've talked about that on the show many times, and that's the one reason why I honor you, because you've also gone as far as taking and making recipes with your food and sharing that on social media and showing the end product of hunting, which is so important, I think. You want to elaborate on that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's delicious. Right now in my freezer, I think I have, grouse, I have trout, moose, elk, sheep, oryx, and all of people say, well, what can you do with that meat? And it's like, well, you can do anything you can do with a pound of hamburger from the grocery store. So I think I made wontons a few weeks ago, and they were delicious. And anytime someone wants to try wild game, like, I'm always going to try and be there to introduce them. And there's just nothing like eating something from an animal you've either harvested or seen harvested. On the goat hunt, we were starving after a hard day of hunting, and just getting back to camp after that long hike and sitting around the campfire and having backstrap, and that being kind of the culmination of 2 days of hard work. And there is just nothing like it. And I think that reconnects us with, like, the human condition, where we started, that you couldn't always go to the store and pay $10 and get this saran wrapped thing that you're going to consume. And I really like that part of it, because it's like going back to what, humans have experienced for thousands of years, that we've decided to cut out of the equation and then demonize when people still feel like they need to do that.
And it connects you with nature in a way that nothing really can connect you with nature at its primal source. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, whether you're just observing and you don't even harvest anything, you're paying attention to things that, if you're just hiking on the trail and you're not looking for that stuff, they're not even going to be, on your radar. And I think that's the difference. You're watching things you've never watched, or maybe having experiences that you just wouldn't have, because you're not going to be sitting in the woods for 4 hours for no reason.
Right, exactly. And most people that are antis or preservationists in that regard are not doing that kind of thing, on a regular basis to go out and take pictures or whatever the case may be of animals. But as hunters, we get more of a real connection, I think, with nature. And not to say that hunting is the best of everything, but I mean, you and I certainly agree that it is definitely important, and definitely puts, just take Africa, for example. And Jason's talked about that on his show before. That's a place you and I haven't been before, but, without hunting and without a need to hunt for those animals, there's no value on the animal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And that's hard to explain to people. It's hard to have that discussion.
Right. Yeah, that is. But and you see, there've been cases in parts of Africa where hunting has been done away with, and the animal populations have dropped, in numbers. And
right.
I think that's definitely important to consider, that hunting and conservation is what grows animal populations. Just look at America and all the different animals that we've grown over the years, in large populations that were almost in extinction. That we've brought out because of Teddy Roosevelt and folks like that have really put conservation at the forefront of what they do in legislation and in their own personal activities. So
I think a lot of what makes Africa hunting so offensive to some people is all about context. You see a zebra or a giraffe that's been harvested, and it's just a shock to us because we're used to seeing those animals in zoos.
Right.
And, I had this discussion with a friend the other day who used to be an anti-hunter, by the way, and I converted her, and she's very
converted her. I love it.
Now.
That's great.
Yes, over 4 years.
Oh, good for you,
It's
Katie.
been a long discussion. She was an anti-hunter, and she's like this extremely intelligent person that's willing to have those discussions. And so we've had little discussions here and there, and over the course of time, she's come to understand hunting and conservation, and it's so cool, to the point where she even wants to go hunting now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is great, let's do this. But we were talking the other day, and I think a lot of it's context. It's like, in your world, a giraffe is a zoo animal. In their world, it could be something completely different, and that's hard to understand because we live in this this world where everything fits in these little tiny boxes
right.
for what we think it should be. And we just don't know what that could ever be like, to see a giraffe or a lion as food and sustenance.
Exactly. And the thing is, you put it in perspective, and I bring this up from time to time as far as things that are facts in the world, but 1 billion people slept on a dirt floor last night around the world. 80% of the world's population will never use a cell phone. Things like that, the statistics. So the meat that goes into the hunting, does not go to waste in Africa. It's used to feed the villagers in those villages around that hunting area in a lot of cases.
Right.
And, I definitely think that should be said, and that should be brought up, that we're not just killing for fun, we're killing for, obviously we're killing for a trophy, but we're also feeding people, as a result of that, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. And I think, too, there's a really big ambiguity surrounding trophy, right? Because
yes.
when we say trophy, if you're taking a trophy mule deer in New Mexico, well, you're probably taking an older animal out of the herd, and that is fine. But when I always say to people, well, what do you mean by trophy? Because
yes.
in terms of management, you want to be taking the oldest animal, so it's
right.
fine. And there's a delineation there between maybe age of the animal and a trophy, as in, I got my lion or an elephant or something
right.
like that. And
right.
obviously that's a different conversation. And
yes.
so with people that maybe aren't as familiar, you have to kind of dive into that detail of what they're meaning first.
Yes.
And hopefully then you can start a constructive conversation.
Absolutely. I'm looking at my office right now. I've got a red stag, which is, a New Zealand or a European animal. But I killed him here in Texas on one of the high fence ranches that I hunt, that I work with. And he's got 3 on one side and 4 on the other. He's a 3x4, but he goes straight up. instead of out and back, how most of the antlers go. And I shot him because he was unique. He's not something that everybody's going to see just every day, and he's the biggest exotic that I have in my office right now. And I just wanted to just be different. So sometimes, that's the other side. And I ate all the meat. This is back in 2010 when I harvested them. And, I took me 4 days to hunt that animal, and it took me a missed shot and, a bunch of a lot of heartache and, closeness to getting that kill. But, it was a story behind that is what I'm trying to say. It's not just about the antler size. It's about the story behind the animal, when you mount an animal or anything like that. Right.
Oh, sure. I mean, for me, my bighorn ewe is my trophy. And It's funny because I was even talking to a guy this week, and he thought I had killed a ram, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible! Your first bow kill was a ram." And I was like, "Oh, actually, it was a ewe." And you could hear the disappointment in his voice, which is kind of funny. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I let you down." But I had killed a ewe. I think in 2015 was my first hunt, and I got one with a rifle, and my second one was a bow kill, and the amount of work I had to put in to get that. It's a trophy to me, like beyond any other trophy that I have. Like I got a bow, 7 months before and learned how to shoot it and got a shot, and it was perfect.
That
and
is
it's
amazing.
Like everyone hates on my ewe, but I really like her.
It's in the eyes of the beholder, It's what's a trophy to you. I mean, I had a friend of mine that's not really a hunter. He's starting to get into it. He came over and looked at my stag the other night, and he said, "Oh, you'd love to go to New Zealand and kill one, 3 times that size." I said, "How many stags have you killed, buddy?" So
right.
That's definitely a consideration. It's in the eye of the beholder and the hunter, and there's a story behind that animal, and that's why I don't have an issue. My mother-in-law has a big issue with animals that are shoulder mounted, that have the eyes looking at you and that kind of stuff, and she would never allow my father-in-law he could only do European mounts, skull mounts, and so I kind of thought that was funny. But I've got all shoulder mounts and European mounts all over my office and in our bedroom, and there's a story behind every single one of them, and that's the trophy. It's not just, oh, this animal's got bigger horns than any other animal. The trophy is in the memory. I really think that needs to be said.
Oh, I totally agree. Absolutely. And I think, different people have different comfort levels with seeing the animal in different ways, but I mean, it's whatever is meaningful to you. And, I would love to someday have a shoulder mount, but right now all mine are, European because my dad and I can stick it in a pot of boiling water and be done in a few hours.
Well, and there's another conversation, Katie. There's another around the campfire, boiling out a head. I mean, as gross as that may sound, I mean, that's another bonding experience for you and your dad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, I enjoy the meat processing just as much as the hunt, and
I do too.
Just quality time with the people that you're with. It's so cool. Like my dad and I didn't get to spend a lot of time together when I coached soccer or played, and this is kind of a transition. He's retired now. I want to spend as much time with him as possible, and, we go walking out in the woods for 3 hours and then go back to camp, and then once you get the animal, I mean, good Lord, we take so long to process our meat.
Yeah.
Like probably it's a good 7-8 hours that we do it ourselves.
Sure.
And it's my dad teaching me the cuts, and passing that down because my granddad was actually a butcher.
Oh,
and
wow.
So just that process of my dad saying, okay, here's how you do a butterfly steak, or what do we want to do with these shanks? And like walking through that whole process is just so cool. And it's time together. I mean, it's a long, hard process, but it's quality time, uninterrupted time without the technology. And I think, we both work in advertising, and so I'm constantly connected, on social, on my computer, on my phone, and it's just such a great detox to put all that stuff away and get out there with the people you love and just be living life and paying attention to them and everything around you.
Absolutely. I could not say that better myself. I'm so happy you joined me on this show because you and I are speaking the right language to each other. This is great. Oh my gosh. I was also going to say one of the things, Katie, that you do very well is portray hunting in the right light, I think, in social media, in the way that you show what goes into your hunts, the way that you show the fitness side, the way that you show, the just not the ugly, gory side of hunting, but really the part that should be respected by all. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, I try to. I think it's something we all need to be cognizant of because, today anything can be taken and flipped on its head, or disrespect, to the animals. It really can portray hunters in a negative light.
Yes.
And so that's something I'm certainly aware of is what pictures I post. And, sometimes I posted a picture a few weeks ago where I'm field dressing a deer and, I understand that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm still showing the respect that I'm getting my hands dirty and getting in there to do it. I just think it's really important if people are out there doing bonehead, things, they're just making us all look bad.
Yes.
And it just lights a fire that can really take off. And so my goal is, yes, to encourage people that want to hunt, but also maybe try and show a different side of hunting to people that are adamantly against it. And I've had situations like that where I've had good conversations with people, but holy cow, they come in, just ready to fight. And you have to, by having that foundation of like where they could scroll through my feed and see all of that, I mean, I just think it's a good starting point for them to see I'm like not an evil person.
Yes.
But we all need to be aware of how it's portrayed because, there's certain things that wouldn't offend hunters that if somebody that's never hunted, if they see it, they're just going to lose it. And that's not what we want.
No, not at all. And I mean, that's something I try. I'm very cognizant of that or very aware of that more than I ever have been because social media is such a huge thing now that so many people read and watch and follow. And one of the guys that I am friends with, Dustin Ellerman of our team, he's our shooting editor at Texas Fish and Game. He portrayed a picture, and I've talked about this in the show before, of his daughter, 16-year-old daughter, harvesting her first buck. And with a AR-15 style rifle, I think it was in 300 blackout, and it had a suppressor on it. And you should have seen the outrage of some people saying, well, just death threats to her too, and some people just talk. And I'm just like, guys, if y'all only understood what went into this, and this is her first deer, and this is definitely important to her and to the dad, and just see the context that we're portraying here. I mean, this deer was legally harvested. Sure. It was ethically harvested. It didn't it lived a great life before it died. It did not live a horrible existence, going into being slaughtered or whatever, like these, so many of these places that slaughter meat, for slaughter animals for meat. It's a much different existence, and they're almost hypocrites if they eat meat. And boohoo somebody that's trying to do.
Oh yeah.
Something like that, because they're just as guilty of that animal dying that they're eating and the plastic wrap and the saran wrap and the styrofoam at Walmart than they are that person taking that animal with a gun. I
agree 200%. I think that's usually always one of my first rebuttals if I choose to get fired up and enter one of those conversations is, do you eat meat?
Right.
Because if you eat meat, I can bet you that I'm putting a whole lot more time and effort and understanding into what I'm, killing and putting into my body than you are.
Exactly.
And so it's like, don't be a hypocrite. However, if they are full vegan or vegetarian, that shifts the conversation a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, it's a joke. Anyone that is against hunting and eats meat, there is nothing more hypocritical because, they could put in the time and effort to learn about food systems and learn about hunting and go do it themselves. And there's a little part of me that wants to be like, if you can't kill it, you shouldn't be eating meat. Of course, that's like taking it a step maybe too far. But, in my mind, it is, gory, and it's a little hard to deal with sometimes.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of funny, but I was, 8, how old was I? Maybe like early 20s. And I cried when I first shot a cow elk. I mean, it was just, it's very an intense experience to take a big mammal. And, now my reactions are, always with great reverence because you're spending so much time with these animals and understanding where they live. But, you're happy. I mean, it's like this weird mix of sadness for taking its life and being grateful and, understanding that you did something really cool. And so, I just think if people are going to eat meat, they need to take a step back and take a look at what they're really arguing for or against instead of, demonizing it right off the bat because they don't want to do any research.
Right. Exactly. And I like the words you use, reverence and gratefulness. I that's the way I look at a harvest myself here in Texas. When you take an animal, even if it's a feral hog, so many people poo-poo feral hogs because there's such an abundance here in the state. But every animal's life means something, to me when I harvest that. And I've been close to crying before, when I was early in the game and hunting. But now I just have a lot of gratefulness that I was able to harvest that animal. I know you agree with me there.
Oh yeah.
And just the gratefulness that you had the opportunity to interact with that animal for that amount of time. I mean, I think that's the key of what we do as hunters,
Well, yeah, and I think you need to find that out for yourself.
Yes,
that
exactly.
You could hear from everybody in the world that javelina are stinky and there's not that much meat and they're not that cool and who cares about javelina. For me, I heard that from everybody and went on a hunt. And I kind of research animals as much as I can before
Sure.
I go to understand what are they eating and just learn about them because it's so cool.
Habitat,
And I'm like, holy crap, yeah, these little guys survive off, cholla cactus. And how the heck do they eat that and get their moisture from that? It's incredible.
It is.
And, you walk away with 12 pounds of meat, but I learned, about their habitat, how they survive, and they're incredible. I know, on Phoenix, they're on golf courses and rooting through trash cans,
Right.
But that's not the way it is here. And so for me, it's like a personal journey to try out, different kinds of hunts so that you can then have a say. Like, did that feel good to me? Did I like, the way in which I harvested that animal and just learning, where your boundaries are and what you think is a worthy pursuit,
Sure. No, that's great. And tell me this too, you're a bow hunter. Do you have a particular bow that you like to shoot? I saw your last Instagram, you were shooting on your knees, basically getting ready for a blind or stand hunt, sitting down. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I don't know if I can honestly call myself like a bow hunter yet because my first bow hunt was a sheep this year and I went out and I tagged out on my first shot. So I know a big part of bow hunting is having missed shots and
Right.
missed opportunities. And so I think I'm like on my way to maybe someday becoming
Sure.
a bow hunter, but I haven't experienced that like bow hunter heartbreak that really makes you, what you
yes.
are.
Yes,
but
indeed.
I love it. I can tell you I'm going to keep doing it for sure. I hope to kill a turkey. Our spring season opens April 15th, and so I'm trying to kill a turkey with my bow. Yeah, but I shoot a PSE Stinger Stiletto.
Great.
It's been a great little bow for me, and I think a good point there is it was, $380 off Craigslist, and I
Sure.
got a couple little upgrades and a drop-away rest and a better sight. And, it's been fantastic. I'm only shooting 42 pounds right now, and it flew right through that sheep. And so I think it's cool that you don't have to have $1,000 bow.
Right.
My bow's probably $450.
Right.
So
I wanted to bring that up
just
because
making that point.
Yeah, that's really a good consideration because my bow, when I bought it, I guess it's been almost 10 years ago now, was $200 out the door. I bought it used off Craigslist just like you did. And I'm getting ready to get into some new bows here pretty soon. But I just love the sport. And I've certainly had the heartbreaks and everything else. I've done it a while, but it's just a different pursuit of hunting that I want to encourage our listeners to get into. Because there are a lot of heartbreaks, but there's also a lot, you're getting up close and making those really close shots and some of those far away shots, but are still close. But would you agree it's an adrenaline rush like nothing else?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Honestly, like when I sent my arrow flying and my friend said, hey, that was a perfect shot. And then I saw the sheep crashing. It was unreal because you're at 30 yards. You're 30 yards away,
right?
And picking your spot. And oh my goodness, yes, it was an adrenaline rush. Although for me, I kind of had some target panic when I first started hunting.
Sure.
And for some reason, when I took that bow shot, I was just totally clear. My head was in the game, and I was just really focused.
Right.
And so I didn't get that target panic, but that's an interesting piece, of information for new hunters that the more you get out and like actually look at the animals and watch them before your hunt, I think that can be really helpful in target panic. So you're not seeing a sheep or a deer or elk for the first time when you're trying to take your shot because it's overwhelming.
Yes.
You're like,
A lot of emotions.
You have to pick your spot. Oh, totally, yeah. And I've had knock knees before, for sure. Like,
oh, sure.
One cow elk hunt, oh my goodness. Like, my brother-in-law made me belly crawl and then get up and get on the sticks, and I could barely stand up. So
I can't stand up. I can just imagine. Yeah, I've been in situations like that before where you just target panic. You just can't make the shot. And but you're right, getting around those animals and learning about them, watching them, those kind of things, getting used to their habitat is a way to get past that really easily. I tell new hunters that a lot as well.
Yeah, and bow hunting is just different. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. I hope that I can bow hunt for many years to come, but just sending an arrow flying is a really different feel than pulling a trigger. Mm-hmm. And I like both, but I think, the kind of prowess it takes to get within bow range is a whole nother challenge, and one I'm still working to learn. Playing the wind and the sunlight and getting in within bow range is just, it's a lot tougher than setting up on sticks or,
yes.
Putting your rifle on a tree and taking a longer distance shot. So.
Absolutely. It is. And I mean, but that's what draws me to it is the challenge, because I've killed a ton of animals with a rifle. In fact, recently all of my kills have been rifle kills just because I've been at ranches that don't allow bow hunting. But the thing that's crazy about it though is when you really get up front and personal and close counters, your heart thumps, your adrenaline goes wild, and I just think it's great. I mean, I'm definitely going to get out there and do some more of it. I hunt a lot with a crossbow versus a compound bow, but I'm definitely going to get out there with both here and do some more archery hunting because I just forget sometimes how awesome it is. But you're reminding me that.
Yeah, well, and I would say, I would never want to deter anybody from rifle hunting because just get out there and hunt. And I know it's also a time consideration. So
sure.
For me, when I first started hunting, I just didn't have a lot of time to go. And so, I'd go to the shooting range and make sure I got out there a few times before I went. Right. And sometimes a rifle hunt is a lot more doable time-wise than a bow hunt.
Sure. No, that's great. So, Katie, I don't want to take any more of your time. I know you're a busy gal. Please tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah, so New Mexico Huntress, that's my handle on Instagram and Facebook. And, right now I'm just really trying to be a resource for anybody that is interested in getting into hunting. If they have questions, they can always chat with me via Facebook or Instagram. And I have guys that are my age, I went to high school with, and they're saying, Katie, how can I get into hunting, or what gear do I need to go muskie fishing?
I love it.
And, I don't know everything, but I'm always willing to help people. And obviously I have great resources where if I don't know something, I can ask. And so, my social, it's not about me being in the spotlight. It's about making connections and helping
yes.
people. And I can tell you that I've met so many amazing females in Albuquerque through Instagram that I probably wouldn't have met
right.
Any other way. And so for me, it's about that community and just really connecting with people and helping each other out.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm very much like that too. If anybody wants to ever call me with a question, if I don't know the answer, I've got a whole magazine staff that knows in the outdoors. But, I think you and I both have a heart for helping other people. And that's one reason why I honor you. And also, you're the second female guest that I've interviewed on my podcast. So,
I know. I can't believe it. That's so cool.
That makes me feel so good. I plan to have many more female guests on, but I mean, I just think what you're doing is just incredibly wonderful, and you're showing the hunting and fishing and outdoor sports in the right light and in the right fashion and form. And you're a great example for other hunters and huntresses. Well,
I appreciate that very much. It's humbling to hear that from other people, and I mean, I'm just doing what I love and living, the lifestyle that really was put in front of me, and now thank God I came back to it because it really just changes your outlook on everything else you do, like it puts life in perspective. And
yes.
Definitely for, everybody, but I think especially girls and even young girls, it's really great to try and do something like this because it just helps your self-confidence and helps you really be firm in who you are and understand what you're capable of. And right. I think that's super cool, with all the nonsense we have in our world. What a great thing to be focusing on. So if I can help anybody out, that's why I'm trying to put myself out there. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us today, Katie.
Thank you, Dustin. It was great talking to you, and hopefully I can make it to Texas someday to hunt axis deer or hogs or something.
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely. We'll have something set up for you over here for sure. So thank you so much. And there she goes, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Katie DeLorenzo. You can find her on Facebook and Instagram with her spelling of her name, or New Mexico Huntress is her handle on both of those social platforms. And she is just awesome to follow. I love checking out her content because she has just got some awesome things to share in the outdoors about hunting and fishing in New Mexico, and just the joys of hunting and fishing in that state, and just archery and shooting and all the different things. Just every time I see a female that's that active in the outdoors, it just energizes me, because that's what I try to do over this podcast, is over the airwaves of the podcast, if you will, is try to energize people to go out and enjoy all that the outdoors has to offer. It's a God-given thing. We've been blessed with all these kind of things, and to conserve them and to put our best foot forward in view of anti-hunters and people that don't appreciate the sport, I think is quite important, and we definitely covered that a lot of the podcast today. So I wanted to thank you for that. If you have not already subscribed to Texas Fish and Game Magazine, you live in the state of Texas, please go forth and do that. The magazine is relatively inexpensive per year. You can sign up for multiple years and even get a bonus item or two out of the promotions that we're running right now. And then we also have the podcast that you can download and subscribe to. The podcast is free. It does not cost anything per month to listen to it. And we're going to keep it that way with some sponsors that we have coming on board here pretty soon. And all you have to do is find us on iTunes. You can find us as well on Stitcher Radio and any other platforms that you can find an RSS feed for podcasting is where you'll find us. We are at thebestoftheoutdoors.podbean.com. That has all of our episodes we've ever aired and released live to the public, and that goes back about 30 some odd episodes, so there's plenty of content to listen to in the past if you'd like to learn about a specific subject. And we cover a lot of awesome things on the show, and we'll continue to do that. Hunting and fishing is our mainstay, but we talk about guns and rifles and shotguns and air guns and archery and those kind of things as well. And I look forward to talking about bow fishing and those kind of subjects more in the future as well. So if you've not subscribed to the show, please do so. You'll get the new episodes as they come out every 2 weeks, and really look forward to having you on that. A couple of housekeeping notes. I'm going to be gone this coming weekend to Crosswater Outfitters, which is my Christian fishing ministry I talk about on the show quite a bit. We're a small group of Christian men that get together and do soldier events for wounded soldiers that are getting out of the military, as well as their families. We also do friends and neighbors events where we basically, people that are civilians or non-military have events to kind of encourage them in the faith. And we also do a thing with the Bridges Ministry where we go and minister to kids that are in college that are all of all kinds of different faiths. And anyway, those are great things that are happening there, and I'm going to a weekend with that, a retreat to help serve the soldiers and our catfish jug fishing ministry. And also am going to speak at a Legacy Outfitters meeting next Tuesday, and I'm excited about that. And I've got Chester Moore's radio show is called More Outdoors, and that's going to be on KLVI, which you can download on iHeartRadio this Friday coming up on, that's going to be the 7th most likely. I should be on his show if it's not preempted by a baseball game as it was last week, and should be on his show talking about bow fishing at a little bit after 6 o'clock on this coming Friday. The 7th of April. So anyway, really excited about that. Hope you continue to listen. Thank you so much for doing so. And thank you so much for watching, reading, and listening. And have an awesome day in the outdoors.